The projector clicked on, and my work filled the wall, charts, forecasts, conclusions I knew by heart.
My name was nowhere on the slide.
His was centered and bold. The CEO leaned forward, impressed. I didn't move. I didn't react. I just watched him straighten his jacket like a man about to be promoted for a miracle he didn't perform. The conference room smelled like burnt coffee and polished wood, the kind of place where careers quietly die or suddenly take off. Evan cleared his throat and smiled, confident in the way only stolen certainty allows.
Hi.
My name is Maribel Knox. I'm a senior data strategist at this company. 8 years in, 2 promotions earned the hard way, and a reputation for being reliable. That word gets used on women when people want your work, but not your voice. Evan is my colleague. Same department. Same access level. Different ethics. He's charming, loud, and very good at taking credit while pretending it was handed to him. It started with small things. Can you send me that file? Mind if I reference your model? Compliments disguised as dependency. Then one night, I stayed late to finish a risk analysis. I stepped away for 5 minutes, just 5, to take a call. When I came back, nothing looked wrong. No alerts. No warnings. Just my login still active. I didn't accuse him. I didn't panic. I checked the access logs instead. That's when I saw it. My credentials used after I'd left, files opened that only I touched. My stomach dropped, but my face stayed calm. Because here's the thing Evan never understood about me. I don't confront. I prepare. So I rebuilt everything. Quietly. Every dataset. Every projection. I replaced the originals with something that looked flawless but wasn't. Now he's presenting it to the CEO. And I'm sitting in the front row, waiting for the first question. After that night, I started seeing everything differently. Every smile in the hallway felt measured. Every great job, team, email felt like a quiet erasure. Evan didn't change his behavior at all. That's what scared me most. He still joked loudly in meetings, still asked questions he already knew the answers to, still treated me like a helpful background character in his story. Our department ran on pressure and silence. Long hours.
High stakes.
Unspoken rules about loyalty. The kind of place where you're expected to swallow discomfort if it keeps the numbers clean. I'd watched men rise fast here before. Never because they were smarter, but because they were louder and less careful about lines they crossed. The files he stole weren't just spreadsheets. They were the backbone of a strategic shift the CEO had been hinting at for months. A restructuring plan. Millions in projected savings. Whoever delivered it successfully would be untouchable. Evan knew that. That's why he needed my work. What he didn't know was that I'd layered the data with subtle inconsistencies. Nothing obvious. No rookie mistakes. Just assumptions that collapsed under scrutiny. Dependencies that contradicted each other. A model that only worked if no one asked the wrong question. And people always ask questions at the top. In the days leading up to the presentation, Evan grew bolder. He started speaking over me in meetings, correcting me. Once he laughed and said, "Relax, Maribel, I've got it handled." Like he'd been carrying the weight all along. I smiled back. Let him believe that. Because while he was rehearsing his big moment, I was preparing for mine. I met with compliance.
Quietly.
I forwarded logs, screenshots, timelines. I didn't accuse, I documented. By the time the board meeting arrived, pressure was already cracking the room. Evan just didn't hear it yet. The morning of the board presentation, Evan walked in like a man already congratulating himself. New suit. New confidence. He nodded at people who barely knew his name, soaking in attention like it was overdue interest. When he saw me, he paused just a fraction too long, then smiled. "You ready for this?" he asked, lowering his voice like we were co-conspirators. I nodded. Absolutely. He didn't hear the warning in it. As the meeting started, I felt the room tighten. Executives leaned back, arms crossed, eyes sharp. This wasn't a friendly crowd. They weren't here to be impressed. They were here to test. Evan launched into his presentation smoothly, voice steady, pacing perfect. Slide after slide of my work. My logic. My phrasing. He even repeated a joke I'd made weeks earlier, and the room laughed again. Then the questions began. At first, they were easy. Clarifications. High-level confirmations. Evan answered confidently, clicking forward without hesitation. I watched his shoulders relax. He thought he'd won. Then the CFO asked about risk dependencies, specifically how certain cost savings would hold under variable market pressure. Evan paused. Just a second. He clicked back a slide, then another. His answer sounded right, but something shifted in the room. I felt it before I saw it. The COO leaned forward. That contradicts your earlier assumption, she said calmly. Evan laughed it off. No, it actually supports it. I raised my hand. The room went still. Every head turned toward me. I'm sorry, I said evenly, but that assumption was revised. The original model didn't survive stress testing. Evan's face tightened. What are you talking about? I met his eyes for the first time that day. The data you're using, I said softly, isn't the final version. And just like that, the air changed. You could hear the silence settle. Thick, uncomfortable, expensive. Evan turned fully toward me now, smiling in a way that begged me to stop. Maribel, I think you're confused. This is the dataset we finalized together. We hadn't. And he knew it. The CEO glanced between us. Is there an issue? I stood.
Slowly.
Not dramatic, deliberate. There might be, I said. Because the version Evan is presenting doesn't align with the validated files stored on the secure server. Evan's smile cracked. That's not true. The CTO tapped her tablet. I'm pulling the audit trail now. That's when it happened, the moment people would later describe as the turn. The screen behind Evan refreshed. Charts shifted. Numbers recalculated in real time. The projected savings evaporated, replaced by red flags and cascading losses. A murmur rippled through the room. Evan stared at the screen like it had betrayed him. This isn't, he looked at me again, panic flashing. You changed it. No, I said. I finalized it. The CFO stood. These assumptions would expose us to serious regulatory risk. The CEO's voice dropped. Why would you present unverified data? Evan opened his mouth. Closed it. Tried again. I accessed what was available. The CTO didn't look up. Using Maribel's credentials. After hours. That landed hard. Faces turned away from Evan now. Phones buzzed. Notes were taken. Someone whispered compliance, like a curse. I sat back down, heart racing, face calm. This wasn't loud. This wasn't messy. This was surgical. And Evan was still bleeding. He just didn't know how badly yet. I didn't feel victorious walking out of that room. I felt hollow. Like something had finally snapped into place after being bent for too long. Evan didn't follow me. He couldn't. Compliance had already pulled him aside, their voices low, their faces unreadable. I heard my name once, then again, but no one stopped me. I went to the restroom and locked myself in a stall, breathing through the adrenaline. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from release. For weeks, I'd carried the weight of what he did, the insult of it, the quiet question of whether I should just let it go. That was the hardest part. Knowing how often women are expected to absorb damage, so things stay smooth. I washed my face and looked at myself in the mirror.
Calm.
Controlled. Still employed. That's when my phone buzzed. Compliance. Please come by at 3 p.m. to walk us through your documentation. I'd anticipated that. I'd prepared for it. The screenshots were time-stamped. The logs undeniable. But there was one more step I hadn't told anyone about yet. 2 weeks earlier, I'd sent an email, polite, neutral, to IT security. Not an accusation. Just a question about unusual access patterns tied to my credentials. They replied with a case number. Quietly opened. That case had matured overnight. By the time I sat down with compliance, Evan's story was already collapsing. He claimed confusion. Collaboration. A misunderstanding. I said nothing until asked, then answered simply. Clearly. With receipts. I wasn't angry anymore. I was precise. Because revenge isn't loud when it's done right. It's administrative. And once it starts, it doesn't stop for anyone's ego. The compliance room was colder than the conference floor. No windows, no distractions, just a long table and 3 people whose job was to notice what everyone else missed. Evan sat at the far end, shoulders hunched, hands locked together so tightly his knuckles were white. He wouldn't look at me. "Walk us through the timeline," the lead investigator said, clicking her pen once. I did. Step by step. The late night. The unlocked terminal. The access logs. The files opened under my credentials after I'd left. I didn't embellish. I didn't speculate. I let the facts do the talking. Every timestamp landed like a small, clean cut. Evan interrupted once. "I thought I had permission." "From whom?" the investigator asked. Silence. They projected the access records onto the wall. My login. His workstation. The overlap was undeniable. Then came the IT report, the one generated after my inquiry. It showed repeated access attempts over weeks, all routed through my account. "That's unauthorized use," the investigator said calmly. "And misrepresentation." Evan finally looked at me. His eyes weren't angry anymore. They were scared. "Why didn't you just tell me to stop?" he whispered. "Because you didn't ask, I thought. Because you assumed." I answered aloud. I needed the truth documented. The HR representative closed her folder. Effective immediately, Evan is suspended pending termination review. The word termination hung in the air. As he stood to leave, Evan's badge was taken. The soft click echoed louder than any argument ever had. He paused at the door, turned back once, like he expected me to apologize for surviving this. I didn't. When the door closed, the investigator nodded at me. "Thank you for handling this professionally." Professional. That was the word they used when a woman refused to disappear quietly. Evan didn't disappear the way people expect disgraced employees to. He lingered, in emails forwarded to me by mistake, in whispered conversations that stopped when I entered a room, in the uncomfortable politeness people use when they don't know who to blame anymore. His desk stayed empty for a week before facilities cleared it out. No announcement. No farewell. Just absence. The CEO asked to see me 2 days later. I walked into his office steady, spine straight, heart quiet.
He didn't waste time.
"You understand how serious this was," he said. "Not accusing. Measuring." "I do." He nodded. "Your restraint saved us from a much bigger problem." Restraint. Another careful word. What he meant was, "You didn't embarrass us." I let that sit between us. Then he surprised me. "We're restructuring the strategy team. I want you leading the next phase." I didn't smile. I thanked him. I asked about safeguards, about access controls, about accountability. He listened. That was new. Outside his office, my phone buzzed again. "Unknown number, you ruined me." I stared at the screen, pulse steady. I typed nothing back. Because here's the truth no one talks about. The fallout doesn't belong to the person who tells the truth. It belongs to the one who built their future on theft and hoped no one would notice. Later that afternoon, compliance forwarded me the final report. Evan had confessed, partially, enough to seal it. His resignation was effective immediately. His reference requests would be limited. I packed my bag that evening lighter than it had felt in months. As I left, I passed the conference room where it had all unraveled. The chairs were reset. The screen dark, like nothing had ever happened. But I knew better. And as I stepped into the elevator, my phone buzzed one last time, this time from legal. Subject: additional findings. I held the doors, reading, and realized this wasn't over yet. The elevator doors closed, and I read the email twice to make sure I wasn't imagining it. Additional findings. During the investigation into Evan's access, IT uncovered similar patterns tied to 2 prior projects, different credentials, same workstation, same timing. The losses from those projects hadn't been traced back.
Until now.
I leaned against the mirrored wall, breath slow, heart steady. This wasn't just about me anymore. Evan hadn't made a mistake. He'd built a system. A quiet one. Borrowed logins. Selective credit. Promotions that didn't quite add up. Legal asked if I was willing to testify if it went further. I wrote back one sentence, yes. I already have everything organized. That night, I slept better than I had in weeks. Not because I'd won, but because I hadn't compromised myself to survive. The next month moved fast. Evan's resignation turned into a formal termination, then into a civil matter, then into something his lawyer couldn't smooth over with charm. People stopped whispering when I walked by. Not out of fear, out of clarity. The final twist came quietly. The CEO announced a new internal policy named after no one. Just a system, dual verification, transparent attribution, real accountability. He didn't look at me when he said it. He didn't have to. On my desk, a new badge waited. New role, new access. My name spelled correctly. Weeks later, I ran into Evan once, outside a cafe. He looked smaller, tired. He opened his mouth like he wanted to say something, an apology, maybe, or an accusation. I smiled first. Not kindly, not cruelly, just finished. Because revenge isn't about watching someone fall apart. It's about standing exactly where you earned the right to stand, and knowing no one can ever move you again.